Want to stop juggling spreadsheets, calendars, and a dozen apps just to run your rentals? Logify makes it easy. It's an all-in-one toolkit for hosts. Build a direct booking website, automate guest messaging, and keep all your channels in sync. Running your rental business your way has never been simpler. And for Good Morning Hospitality listeners, you can get 20% off any yearly plan with code GMH20. Just check the link in the show notes to get started today.
Welcome to Good Morning Hospitality, your one-stop shop for the latest news, noteworthy trends, and thought-provoking discussions across the industry. From hotels and short-term rentals to all things travel and hospitality, you'll find each episode equips you with the information you need to start your week. Join us on Good Morning Hospitality every Tuesday, wherever you get your podcasts. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, Leo. How's it going?
I am very well, my good friend Sarah. I'm very well. I feel like I've not been as productive as you this morning. I don't want to. We are going to get into what you've been up to. I'm sure you've been doing fitness classes. So last night, youngest baby had a cold, so he could only sleep sat up, sort of leaning on your chest. So Jasmine and I had to kind of split the sleeping duties between us. And then when I did get into bed for my shift, oldest daughter decided to wake up and just want to read a story and drink milk. So, all I'm saying is thank God for the touch-up feature on StreamYard, right? Keeping me honest right now.
Parenting life.
Right? Anyway, enough complaining. I'm happy. I'm good. Life's good. What have you been up to, buddy?
Yeah, I went to the gym 4 times this week, so I'm pretty proud of myself. I went to the gym this morning. I did my butt class. It was me and a bunch of the grandmas, and the class makes me laugh because everybody does their own thing. So the teacher will say, okay, and now we're going to do squats. And like everybody's got their own ailments, especially in the class full of old ladies. So they just go at their own pace. I mean, just we're looking from the outside, it's like bobbing heads, but all at different paces. Nobody's going to the music. It's ridiculous. And today there was this young guy that joined, and he walked in and was thinking, you could see his face, and he was probably thinking like, the same thing I did the first day I walked in, like, oh gosh, this class is going to be a joke. It's full of grandmas. And he was like having to stop in the middle, suffering. So it was nice to see. It was nice to see a new, really suffering. And like the guy was, the guy looks like he like worked out, he's over there normally like weightlifting and stuff. I've seen him before. And I was thinking, oh, I'm going to love it. I'm going to love it. And he was suffering. So I feel very vindicated.
Well done. And I like the fact that the grannies rule, right? The grannies are like, oh, here comes another one. Here comes another young buck who thinks they're going to beat. Well done, grannies. Well done.
Exactly. Yeah. And then other than that, I'm about to start the work on the flat. So I think everything is finalized with the contractors. So the rental flat starts construction next Tuesday. Let the fun begin. I'm sure I'm going to have all kinds of headaches for you guys next week.
That is so cool. Now, because we're in the short-term rental space, and I'm sure, who knows, I know the regulation will probably stop you putting it on the short-term rental market, but who knows, midterm, corporate, who knows? All buzzwords I'm going to throw in there before we get started. I think you should do a few shows live from the renovation. I want to see that. I want to see you in a hard hat, like a politician, trying to sell a message. I want you in a construction hat on site, at least 2 episodes. Can you guarantee that to the audience?
I can make no guarantees. I will think about it.
Super fun. Really pleased for you. I think that's genuinely very, very exciting. Have you managed to cause any more offense to anybody in the neighborhood since your last faux pas?
Not that I know of. So far, people smile at me when I go to the building to visit. So, but you always smile at people before you like murder them in their sleep, don't you? So I don't know. No idea.
I do. I certainly do. Yeah. Okay. Yes. Good. All right. Good. Okay. Yeah. She's like, yeah. This girl. She thinks she's. Yeah. We remember. We remember what she did. We remember who she kicked. Nice. Okay. Good. Well, look, I'm sort of recovering quite well from VRMA. I have got back on the jogging trail. Haven't been pulling up trees, I wouldn't say, but I'm definitely recovered. Excited. I've got one more trip this year. So I've got Miami in a couple of weeks' time for Coachella, which I'm really excited about. But it is like we're back in the cave. We're just working away over here. And winter is firmly arriving in the UK. So I'm jealous. Let's not talk about how nice the weather is in Spain because it'll make me jealous. Guys, this week we are going to focus on the fact that this is hot news in Europe, right? HomeToGo confirms they're in discussions to acquire the Interhome Group. Interhome, a very historic mainstream player in the European vacation rental space, meets HomeToGo, who you can't call an upstart anymore, but definitely by comparison to Interhome in terms of years of doing business, they are an upstart. So this one's a really interesting one. So we'll definitely go into that in some detail. And then Sarah, you're going to focus on some data that we've got from the industry around headwinds in the US market, oversupply. I think you're going to tell a story that it's actually a bit more complicated than it first appears. So interested to get your take on that. But yeah, before we dive into that, what's caught your eye this week, buddy?
Yeah, I think the one that caught my eye the most is classic Spain, isn't it? So apparently, Malaga in the south of Spain has put in a ban on short-term rentals in 43 different neighborhoods. So essentially, the ban targets any place or any neighborhood within Malaga that had more than 8% of the homes available that were short-term rentals. So, I mean, to be fair, it's a lot better than like Barcelona's rules. At least it seems to have some kind of criteria to it, right? And we always talk about city planning and like, is it sustainable? And what is the right percentage and what percentage do you want? So currently this ban is meant to last for 5 years. It takes effect in November. And I guess I'm curious to kind of see how this shakes out. If we have any listeners in that area or with properties in that area, would love to understand kind of what the immediate impact is. The news was really short, and so I still need to do some more digging to find a bit more details. I just found this morning, but um, but yeah, definitely keen to kind of keep an eye on it. And I'm curious as to like what happens with existing properties and are they going to be able to continue to operate and under what conditions and also if it's legal. So similar to, in Catalonia, there was essentially a ban even on midterm rentals. And essentially just saying like midterm rental contracts are illegal. You can't do that. You can only do a full 5-year long-term contract. And then implementing rent controls, which was sort of the thing. And within 2.5 months, it was overturned as being completely illegal by the Catalan Parliament. So I'm curious to see if it stands and what the immediate implications are. So yeah, any listeners out there that are operating in that area, please let us know.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. We know that Andalusia, I want to say Malaga's in Andalusia. Yeah. I'm getting nods from Sarah. Good.
And
Spanish
Lena,
geography.
well done.
Embarrass myself too much on Spanish geography. Andalusia is a tourist region for sure. It's a beautiful part of the world. Our contributor and regular presenter Damien Sheridan lives in Nerja, which is near to Malaga. I've been to the region a couple of times on family holidays when I was a kid. Very, very cliche. British person goes to Spain. That's kind of the way it is. And I've been to Nerja, and I've actually been out and had a couple of nights out in Malaga as well. We went to Malaga from Nerja. I wonder if, as a move, it will just push people out further into Andalusia who would have stayed in Malaga. So I wonder if, from a tourist perspective, the local authority there think, do you know what, we can do this because we'll still get people in to come and have lunch in Malaga, but we'll get them out and make sure that locals can still live. So it's very, very interesting. I definitely want to revisit this because it's interesting that they've chosen 43 neighborhoods, and I think there's some threshold, right? So it's where the short-term rental availability is creeping up that they've decided to implement. But again, it is a slight anti-tourist message. That's why it's an interesting move, because people will read the headlines and go, all right, well, I'll just go to Italy. All right, I'll just go to Greece. I'll just go to Portugal. So the effect might be to push tourism out to the regions, or it might be just to slightly reduce it. The other side of it is with Malaga, and you're going to say Spain says this every time a city becomes cool, but I'd heard Malaga be called the new Barcelona. Is that fair? This is popping up, cheaper rents for offices, some companies moving down there. And I wonder then if this is also a way of kind of protecting against the inevitable digital nomad that will come. And again, I think the digital nomad is someone you should be embracing because they will stay for a while. They will add to the tax revenues of a city. They will marry. They will have kids. Like they're looking for their base. They don't stay nomadic forever. I think it's very rare. That'd be an interesting one. I would like to know. I wonder if we've got any listeners. What's the longest you've been on the road? Like, how many years a nomad are you? You're 20 years a nomad. When does it stop? When does it stop? Anyway, I suspect it's a couple of years until you have kids. And I think that you want to be welcoming people like that into your city. So it's interesting. We need to watch it. I always definitely fall down on the side of like being more lenient, because I think you bring more vibrancy and opportunity into your city. But again, like I say, it might be that they figure, well, they can go and stay in Marbella, they can go and stay in Fuengirola, they can go and stay in Nerja, and they can just come and visit us for the day. So perhaps that's their play. It's also a port city. So I wonder what the cruise ship rules are there. I don't know, but that might be something to think about as well, because that will definitely lead to over tourism if they open their ports to cruise ships. Not sure about that.
Yeah, it's definitely one to watch, and I'm curious if it stands, because a lot of times when there's bans like this, I'm still curious about what's going to happen in Barcelona. There's a lot of time between now and 2028 when the official ban is meant to be put in place, and it's in the courts right now. So I'm definitely keeping an eye on it.
It's just such a small amount of housing stock in Barcelona as well, right? Like I honestly think it's
the thing, right? Here in this case, and that's why I have to say, like, okay, if realistically there were places where more than 8% or more than 10% or whatever it is of the overall housing supply was dedicated just to short term, that is a city planning thing that needs to be looked at, right? If you need the city to be sustainable long term, whereas in Barcelona it's less than 1%, so it's negligible. But in Malaga, it's obviously much smaller. Maybe the housing supply is smaller. And this ban, so if there were 43 neighborhoods apparently that had more than 8% of the available housing supply as short-term rentals. So it is significant if they are already having some sort of a housing crisis for locals.
Thanks, Sarah. Interesting article. Let's keep an eye. Let's see how that progresses. It's a last week's story, but I have to also reference what's been keeping me interested is this Uber and Expedia story. I think it's great. I love it. It's like just feels like the news that we all want to consume, but it probably will never happen. But just is really fun because it makes everyone think about what a successful business Expedia is and what a successful business Uber is, and what it might mean for. I think people have been saying like super apps of the future, right? It's in like where you can do your whole lodging through this, and also book your taxi. Now, so I think Will mentioned on Good Morning Hospitality last week about the fact that they also do Uber is doing flights and trains, and that's kind of getting into Expedia's territory. Actually, you know what? We're not going to go into this really because it's just, but what we've got other articles to do. But just go and listen to Good Morning Hospitality, the US crew, Brandy, Michael, Will, because they have a really good debate on this. And what I always like, it's quite fiery. There's some strong opinions on both sides of the aisle here. Michael's like, why would they bother when you could white label what Expedia do? Hopper gets mentioned as a potential better acquisition because it'd be far less expensive than Expedia. So it's really interesting. But again, we love headlines like this because it shows that changes afoot within in the industry, and also it shows that we are on the forefront of innovative thinking. And and again, it's like, if it does happen, what would Airbnb's response be? So yeah, I look forward to talking about it more. But I think for now, let's get into our episode.
Let's do it.
So, good old Europe. HomeToGo confirms discussions to acquire the Interhome Group. Very, very cool. The Interhome Group, traditional short-term rental management company, predating tech-enabled home sharing, predating the Internet of Things. And as such, they probably have hosts that have been with them for longer than you and I have been on the planet, Sarah, I would imagine. And it's huge sort of like name recognition within the markets where they are very, very prominent. So a lot of ski destinations, but also beach and countryside and city as well, but primarily Switzerland, Germany, Austria, Italy, France, little bits and bobs in Spain. And you hear about them regularly. I don't know. I've never actually met anyone from Interhome because I don't think they really exhibit at conferences. Sarah, have you ever met anyone from them?
No, I haven't.
Yeah. And they kind of, I guess they don't need to come to the parties in the same way that the younger businesses do. I think potentially, and they are, like I say, they're unlike they're not a traditional OTA. It's managed inventory. It's 40,000 listings. definitely an end-to-end service, and they have deep relationships with their owners. So let's flip back to HomeToGo. Why would they be thinking to do this? Well, primarily it's because I guess the opportunity's there. So it seems like the retail specialist, a company I admit I had not heard of until I read the article in FocusWire, Migros. I'll admit I've never heard of the company. Are chopping off this part of their business to focus on their core services. So I guess the opportunity, the ball has come out of the back of the scrum, so to speak, and HomeToGo have been growing very successfully year on year. The last earnings report said 27% growth, which is phenomenal. And they have gone after this acquisition strategy to broaden their market, either the acquisitions of OTAs or, in this case, the acquisition of property management companies, to pivot from being just a meta search business to being all over the hospitality vertical. I pointed out when Holiday was doing similar things. Obviously, Holiday and HomeToGo are the two big success stories coming out of Germany in the very, very similar businesses, both phenomenally well-run businesses, I must say. Holiday were doing the same thing, right? It's like you've taken further investment. You're at the point where you're looking for new opportunity. I don't think the type of supply they're acquiring can be ignored. And by that, I mean, they've not gone after an urban operator working in Amsterdam, Madrid, London, and wherever. They're going after these traditional holiday home market areas because they feel like they are going to be less regulated moving forward. So that's the very, very interesting thing about this deal. Obviously, it makes a ton of sense for HomeToGo. They're going after it. They're growing. But again, 10 years ago, I feel like there would have been acquisitions in the urban space. But the urban space is definitely going through a challenging time at the moment. So people are looking at these more traditional businesses and going, I think we can turn a tune out of this, because we get 40,000 new listings. We also get a new website that we've acquired that we can drive more direct bookings to, and we can add it to our overall lump of properties. So I think that also can't be ignored. And I would suspect you can see this through the context of diversification of offering. That's what it feels to me. It's a diversification of offering and a complement to their existing business, and not a cannibalization. So really, really cool potential deal. If it comes off, we'll talk about it more, or maybe there's a hot take in there. Who knows? You heard it here first. What do you think, Sarah?
For HomeToGo, I get it. Interhome, I think they have to be really careful about the way that it is executed. As we mentioned, this is supply that has been with them for years. The relationships with their owners is primordial for the functioning of their business. Their brand and their reputation, if it's not handled properly, if it's a straight acquisition and HomeToGo comes in and says, okay, now we want you to do everything our way, and we want you to be hyper, technology friendly and all these kinds of things, I think there's going to be some growing pains, not only with maybe existing staff, but also with the relationships with the owners. And so I think it's only a good move in so much as they can maintain that supply. If they come in and start making crazy changes and lose all the supply, or lose a massive portion of the supply, then it's a tricky one. So I think it's one that we talk about often on the podcast. Hyperlocal is what works. And so, again, for HomeToGo, it's a no-brainer. It's a great acquisition if they can make it happen. I think it expands them in markets and types of accommodation that normally they would not have access to, because for the most part, these people are not the owners of these properties are probably not going to list on a traditional, OTA. And so I think it does absolutely make sense, but it's all in the details for me. So remains to be seen. But
I like the point you made about unique inventory, as much as they can, as they can guarantee that it is. And I'm not 100% sure what the business model is behind Interhome at the local level and how they operate. But it is, it's end-to-end management if you want it. I think you can probably have marketing only with them as well. But again, truth be told, I'm not an expert on their business model. But I do think that's a really good point. And also a pattern we've seen with the acquisition, it's trying to find supply that probably isn't already plastered over every single OTA, because it's like, instead of cannibalizing, you're enhancing and it's growing. And I think it's fair to say what you're saying, Sarah, is you don't think that we're going to see HomeToGo rental management being the rebrand, right? Like they're going to try and leave this well and truly alone and let its core customer maybe not even notice that the keys to the castle have changed hands.
If they know what's good for them, they will. You heard it here first. Yeah, I think so, because I think otherwise they're at a massive risk of not only losing that supply, but also potentially damaging the brand of Interhome and everything that they've built. So I think it has to be treaded on very lightly.
And we can't ignore the fact that we've got two hugely successful German companies going after it at the same time. It's great. It's like in the 90s when there'd be a battle between who was going to get the number one spot. Would they do that in America as well? People are obsessed about that. It'd be like, it's this week, it's the Spice Girls versus Oasis. Who's gonna get the number one single of the week? Is that just a UK thing?
I know, America's Top 40. It was definitely a thing.
Yeah. I don't know if kids are still any kids listening. Is that still cool? I don't think it is.
I don't think it is. I don't think kids even listen. They don't even know what a top whatever is. If it was on a top list, the kids these days probably don't want to listen to it. They listen to all this like indie stuff and people you've never heard of. I don't know.
Listen once and forget, move on.
Yeah.
I think probably, yeah. So yes, anyway, so the reference doesn't work, but yeah, so it does. I think it's cool that we've got these two companies like getting after it and trying to like smartly acquire different types of lodging businesses. And I do think that they're both taking the view that it's their acquisitions to broaden their base, but they're not trying to, I think, overly involve themselves. They're just using the tech stack they have to maybe make the businesses run more efficiently and ultimately pull them into their meta search. And if they can make the supply exclusive to them in the process, even better. So definitely two to watch. I think it's kind of unique in Europe that we've got normally it's the US software companies. So I think it's interesting that these German ones are having such impact because they understand they understand the European regulation much better than American software companies, and I think they know how to play the landscape a little bit better. You don't hear about either of them getting into trouble with regulators. They do seem to be kind of more entrenched into the European system and know how to navigate it. So yeah, interesting, very very interesting.
Awesome. Let's
My
talk
friend,
about let's
take us on that journey. Take us on that data journey, my friend.
Let's do it. US supply. Awesome. So this comes from an article in Skift. Really scary headline. Short-term rental headwinds. US supply growth is slowing. Let's see if it is. So to start with, this information comes from Key Data, and so that is based on their database of 150,000 properties in the U.S. To put that into perspective, active listings in September 2024 in total in the U.S. were 1.73 million. So it's definitely a percentage of the supply. And so we'll get into some of the numbers in a little bit. But essentially, the article is citing that U.S. growth is remaining what we would consider strong at 10%, but that there's a significant slowdown to what it was a few years ago, which was upwards of 20%. So first of all, is it true? I might be a little bit biased, but as I said, Airbnb collects data on every single property that is listed on Airbnb and or Vrbo in the U.S. So 1.73 million as of September. And yes, I mean, basically it is true. The supply growth is definitely slowing. If we're comparing September 2024 to September 2023, AirDNA is actually reporting a bigger slowdown overall. So 3.9% year over year growth. So much less than the 10% being reported by Key Data. And I think a lot of that has to do with some of the markets where Key Data has a heavy concentration. And we'll look at this a little bit more in the data. But essentially, looking through what happened this summer, there was definitely a surge in the summer in supply. That came to an end in September. And we're now looking at kind of the lowest growth rate for available listings since the beginning of the pandemic's recovery. So it is something to watch. September saw the lowest supply growth since June of 2021, right? So we need to keep that in mind. A couple of theories for why this is happening. Of course, the rates to acquire a mortgage in the US with the Fed raising interest rates, it basically means that in a lot of cases, the cost of a mortgage for a short-term rental property can be double what it was a few years ago. And that definitely has allowed fewer people the confidence to enter the market with a property that needs to be purchased that maybe they don't already own, or maybe without doing it in a different way. Um, and the other things we should look at are the regional disparities between this. So, and this is an interesting one, Leo. Coming back to kind of what we were chatting about earlier with Malaga. We see New York City is the worst performing market, looking at regulatory restrictions. So down 53.4% year over year growth in what's happening there in terms of supply. However, by contrast, New Jersey, so Jersey City and Newark, right across right across the river, are benefiting from this. So supply growth is up 44.1% year over year.
Shocking, right?
Shocking. It's exactly, yeah, it's exactly what we expected. Exactly what we expected. People used to go to Hoboken or to Jersey City to get a deal, and now they're just going there to spend the night. So it's fine, right? So spot on. I think you're probably right about Malaga. We'll see. We'll keep seeing. But aside from some of these shifts, I think it's also interesting to note the specific types of markets. So we're seeing most of that supply growth happening in small city or rural areas. For me, this was a little bit shocking, but I guess maybe it's just due to market saturation. Mountain and lake resort markets are really struggling. And so I think there's two factors here. One is the prices of properties in those areas compared with small and rural cities across the US have historically been much higher because people always want a vacation there. So imagine the cost of a property in Aspen, or Breckenridge is going to be way different from the cost of a property in Newberry, South Carolina, with a really cute street, but nothing much to do except eat fried chicken and go for a walk and go to the library.
Sounds delightful. Sign me up.
It's actually really good. Also, there's
Sign
an
me up.
opera there. I'm not selling it very well. They should hire me from the they should not hire from the DMO. There's an opera house there, and they actually have lots of really cool, particularly country music come there. So, actually not a bad place. So I haven't looked at the numbers.
We're gonna get someone on from Visit South Carolina just to
Yeah,
sell it
this
better
is
than
gonna
that.
get
But,
great.
okay, great.
Yeah. Yeah, nobody quote me on that. Please don't go buy a house in Newbury until you have looked at the numbers, Ferdinand, because I have not checked the numbers, but like whatever, it's a cool place. So imagine a property in a place like Newberry, South Carolina is going to be much more affordable than a property in a traditional mountain lake resort area. And so that is where we're seeing a lot of these supply shifts, which to me is super interesting. So it's not necessarily, I mean, obviously overall supply is down. And I think it possibly also could be due to the fact that maybe there's just fewer properties available for sale in some of those markets. And also the people who are potentially investing in a property to use it as a short-term rental might be less convinced about making an investment in a rural or small town as opposed to a traditional mountain lake resort where they feel like, okay, maybe the price of that property is inflated, but over time, who's not going to want, a chalet in Colorado, or if we use the European version, a chalet in the French or Swiss Alps, it's way more expensive, but it's not going to lose value most likely. So I think there's definitely just a slowdown. A lot of it is economic. And remains to be seen, but I don't know. What do you think, Leo?
Do you think, just an interesting question for you, because you look at the data more broadly, given what you do at ADNA, but are we talking about, do you think, external factors driving this more than just demand slipping? Because it feels to me like the demand is there. And does that mean that if the demand is there, Sarah, we might see a situation where ADRs start to rocket? Well, not rocket, but ADRs go higher, and then the market will correct itself again. Don't know.
Demand is there. Demand isn't growing super fast either. So if we look at the year-over-year growth in demand, total demand nights rose 2.3% year over year. So it's actually slightly lower than the growth in listings overall. What is interesting, and to your point about ADR, what is interesting in that the properties that are coming onto the market tend to be of a higher caliber. So the ones that are contributing to that supply growth. Um, have higher ADRs overall, and so that is having an impact on the rise in ADRs, but occupancy rates are still slightly down year over year. So the growth is slowed in occupancy, the growth is slowed in demand, the growth is slowed in supply, um, and it's shifting by location type as well, which to me I think was the most interesting piece of looking into the data. Was that most of the markets where, in my mind, I would think not a lot of regulation, you know, mountain lake resort, nature. It's the classic solution to over tourism that we're always talking about. Um, but no, that's not what's in the data.
We need the GMOs to step up. Let's deseasonalize. Yeah, let's get people to all these beautiful places that no one's visiting. Right.
That's right. Yeah.
I think it's interesting. I think that yeah, we've seen supply outstrip demand, right, pretty consistently. We've seen that in Europe as well. We've got the slight regulatory headwinds, but again, I think that'll just push people around to the margins and different parts of the world. Short-term rental is here to stay, right? We've talked about this. We talked about this last week when we were at VRMA. You know, as against hotels, it's a growing vertical. NPS for the industry is higher than the hotel industry, so people want to choose it. People are also using it for working remotely, nomad lifestyles, corporate bookings, all of that good stuff. I just feel like potentially there's just a little bit more uncertainty around whether you would invest right now, as you've said. I think that's probably the one that stuck out the most for me when you were talking. Is there's a little bit more uncertainty around right now around where you would invest, and also the fact that the economy is not as buoyant as it could be, and I think that we see those trends in Europe too. But I feel like we are at the beginning stage of that improving. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see where we get to by the end of the year. And I'd be really keen. I'm sure there'll be some European data from AirDNA coming out soon, won't there, that we can deep dive that reviews the year in total, and then predictions for the following year. Because I do feel that we are starting to get we are starting to get interest rates down, and inflation is starting to reduce, and people are starting to spend more money. So I think it's been a very challenging year for the industry globally, Europe, America, and that's what I think is maybe driving some of this. And I think we're going to see it shoot up again in the next year.
Yeah.
Always the optimist, hey? Always the optimist.
I try to be. If I wasn't an optimist, I wouldn't get out of bed. I don't know how people live in a pessimistic mindset. I just can't.
You wouldn't get up and go to butt class, would you? There's no way.
I would never get up and go to butt class. I would just think about how bad it was going to hurt, and I would never go.
See what we did there? We full circled it right back to butt class. Gang, so nice, Sarah. So nice to see you, my friend. What you got going on? What's coming up?
I don't know. You know what, Leo? I recognized a couple of weeks ago that I massively overcommitted myself. I was doing all these things. I was trying to get back to my gym routine. I'd signed up for my improv classes and all that kind of stuff. So I finally had my show last week, which was fabulous. And did I not tell you about this? Yeah,
we've not talked improv. Come on, give us the improv.
Awesome.
We've got to talk about that.
Oh, it was great. It was very embarrassing. Videos were made, but they will never see the light of day. I might send you one on a one-time open situation. There was a photo that one of my friends sent me of my face blown up, and it's essentially just my face. I've never seen myself look so happy. It's just me, just gleeful, just so gleeful. So it was a great life choice. They're starting a new segment this week, but I think that was too much for me. So my new life is kind of being a hermit, actually. So I've got the reno coming up. I've got all these things on. My goal is to go to the gym 4 times a week and be in bed by 11:30. That is my goal.
Anyone listening in the US, 11:30 bedtime in Spain is 9 p.m. bedtime everywhere else, right?
It's really early.
Really hard to do.
It's really early. Yeah, I mean, I finish work at 7. By the time I get home, it's 8. By the time I cook dinner, it's 9. 11:30, I gotta digest my food.
5 a.m. doesn't happen in Spain. It's
no. The gym doesn't open until 6 a.m. I think, and then the first class starts at 7 a.m. So for context, people.
Planning a trip to Barcelona, be aware of that, people. Great, good for you. You sound great. We're getting ourselves ready for Halloween. Costumes are being made. We're getting ready to trick or treat, which is exciting. My daughter who's 3, very excited about it, and also a little bit scared. Some days she's really excited about it, and some days she gets spooked out by it. What a great age to be! It's fun, isn't it?
What's her costume, Leo? I need to know.
Well, we're not sure yet, but she loves Frozen. She loves Elsa, so we might sort of go Elsa, but as a ghost, or we might just go straight up ghost. And then obviously, we'll just dress him however we, make him a pumpkin probably, and him a pumpkin onesie. All right, gang. We're all really busy, as you can see, doing really important stuff with our weeks. Thanks for joining us. It's always great to hang out and see you all and talk about the industry. So if you've enjoyed the show, please hit like, share, subscribe in all the usual social places. And we look forward to seeing you again next week.
Want to stop juggling spreadsheets, calendars, and a dozen apps just to run your rentals? Lodgify makes it easy. It's an all-in-one toolkit for hosts. Build a direct booking website, automate guest messaging, and keep all your channels in sync. Running your rental business your way has never been simpler. And for Good Morning Hospitality listeners, you can get 20% off any yearly plan with code GMH20. Just check the link in the show notes to get started today.